Welcome all to Project Geekology. Thank you for tuning in. Today is December 33rd, 2024. We refuse to acknowledge another year's past. It just doesn't seem like the right time. We're going to be covering something that I hope we can actually make it to the end of, because this is our cursed podcast. This is the curse of the prisoner of Azkaban, because we've tried to record this so many times. I think this is our third time, and like last week I was sick, so I couldn't record that week either. But I'm in good health. I think everyone else is in good health. So today we're covering Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban for our 105th episode of Project Geekology. My name is Dakota, and I'm joined as always with
Anthony. And yes, man, I hope that the curse wasn't trying to take you out before we could record it.
Oh, I had a bit of a issue right before recording where I couldn't hear anything. I had to unplug my speaker, and I was fiddling with that for like 3 minutes. I'm not joking. Before you even logged on, but we are here. We have hopefully all rewatched Prisoner of Azkaban. We're talking about the movie, not the book, and yeah, we're joined. As always, recently, Rich has been a more regular contributor to our podcast. Rich, say hi.
How you guys doing? I'm very happy here to, it's kind of, I think the problem is that you guys didn't have a strong enough Patronus, and the Dementors got to you, and I think that with my Patronus, we're gonna be able to have success today.
What is your Patronus, by the way? Like, what do we know?
Oh, it's definitely a raccoon. I think raccoons are nature's criminals, and I love their masks.
That's a fantastic answer. Anthony, do you have a Patronus?
I do. It's the in the app it was like a fox. I had gotten like a fox.
I think I got a dog, like a basset hound or something in the app, but I feel like I'm more of a meerkat kind of guy.
Dakota wants to emulate his Timon energy,
Speaking about Timon, actually, I I don't know how this came up at work, but there's a guy on my job. His nickname is Pumbaa. He kind of looks like Pumbaa, and one of the other guys is like, "Why not Timon?" And he's just like, "What? Do I look like Timon? I look like Pumbaa." And some other guy, we were on a bus, like going to work, and he goes, "Actually, it's Simone. It's Simone and Pumbaa." And there was like a whole discussion of like, no, it's actually Timon, but this guy just was not having it. So anyway, yeah, Timon. It is definitely Timon.
Oh, man.
Guys, what have you been up to this past couple weeks? We haven't talked since our last discussion.
Yes. Let's throw it over to Rich.
Let's see. Today I went to go see, after the debacle from the War of the Rohirrim, had free passes, and despite having free passes, got too lazy to go to that theater, so went to the local theater to see Sonic 3.
Nice.
I thought it was pretty good. You
had 3 passes, or not 3 passes. You had free passes, and you just tossed them out for the sake of a better showing or a more comfortable showing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still gonna, I think I have a year to use them, so it'll get done
at some point.
Yeah, if it was like 50 today, 50 degrees outside, I think I would have taken a jaunt over. But when I saw the temperature, I was like, no. And other than that,
it's been cold.
Plain Dragon Age, the Veilguard.
Nice. How was Sonic 3?
I mean, I thought it was great. I knew what I was going to watch. My wife decided that she was like, "Hey, I want to go see the movie." So I was like, "Oh, okay."
I'm sure she loved it.
Not sure if you're gonna love it. So she did not play Sonic the Hedgehog, any of them. I think she can identify the character, so there's that.
That's all you need, really.
But she, what did she say? How much money did they give Jim Carrey to lower himself to that 2 times? So
isn't this number 3? Because
he plays 2 characters in the movie. He's pulling an Eddie Murphy type. Not quite, but there is.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. I got you. That's cool. How's Dragon Age? Sorry, Anthony.
No, you're good. No, I was gonna say. Well, I mean, there's a lot of people that could say the same thing about many Jim Carrey movies. If you're you really just don't care for his stuff. But I
I
don't
mean,
know. I enjoyed him as
play,
Doctor.
He did play Count Olaf, which has a whole bunch of different personas. So
Yes. But yeah. Continue away with the Dragon's Age.
Oh, Dragon! I think it's great. I mean, the games don't come out super close to each other, so I think the last one came out for Xbox 360, I believe.
yeah, it's been like over a decade, right?
Yeah. So I started playing it, and I'm like, oh, Solus, yeah, I remember Varric. Okay, and I feel like at the beginning the best part is like you start off as a guy, they end up calling Rook, and I'm assuming because you're like a rookie, and he's confused, and I almost feel like the conceit they made was, well, it's been a long time, so let's have the main character be confused because the people playing have no idea what's going on anymore. So
yeah,
I had one of those things. There's a slider for like, oh, what decision did you make here or here? I had that happen like The Witcher. And I hadn't played Witcher 2, so I went online and tried to do some research. But for this game, I was just like, I made these decisions, and I don't remember them because it was 10 years ago.
right.
But other than that, I think it's great because it starts off very much more like linear. All right, I think you guys know what word I'm trying to say that I can't get out.
Yes.
But then it starts to get sandboxy.
Linguini.
It kind of keeps you like real focused at the beginning, and I think it's good because I played Skyrim and I epically remember becoming the archmage of the Mages Guild before I learned to shout. My friend came over the house and said, "What shouts do you have?" And I said, "What are shouts?" And he's like, "How long have you been playing this game?" And I was like, "I'm playing for a couple weeks." And he's like, "Wait, how are you the archmage of the Mages Guild, but you don't know any shouts?" So I like kind of being funneled and then being allowed to sandbox and then funnel again.
Okay. I gotcha. Cool,
Did you
man.
Foos Roda?
Oh,
Eventually he had to. Anthony, what have you been up to?
I have been up to kind of like hopping between Marvel Rivals and Overwatch. It's like those winter events kind of going on. Marvel Rivals has this Jeff the Land Shark event going on, and Overwatch always has like something like that going on. So I've been kind of like popping in between those. But then I got like a bunch of games kind of like throughout like the holiday season because Steam always has like these sales. They had like the Black Friday sale, then there's like the winter sale, and so like between all of those, I've gotten a couple games. I've got that Metaphor game by Atlas. I haven't been able to hop into it yet, but I really like want to because they say it's like kind of like Persona-esque. Like it's almost like kind of like a blend of Shin Megami and Persona. So like I really want to hop into that. And I got a couple of Final Fantasy games. I got so next month, I think. No, later this month. Final Fantasy Rebirth is coming out onto Steam, and they had like a pre-release sale on it, so I ended up getting that. And I got a Final Fantasy game that a lot of people don't like, and I never really gave it a chance because of that. So I was like, you know what, let me check it out. But Final Fantasy 13.
I like 13. I liked the open world aspect to it, but I have to say my favorite Final Fantasy game is 12. I just thought that the world building was so cool in 12. But
Final Fantasy 12 is good, and that does hold a lot for a lot of people. I think my favorite is 10.
Nice. That's a good one too. Rich, have you ever played a Final Fantasy and or have a favorite?
So for some strange reason, I've only really played 7. I don't understand it because at the time it was definitely I remember there was like a Knights of the Round Table spell, or there was a materia or something, and there was a Knights of the Round Table, and it was like an epic crazy move that was like 97 attacks, and I thought I remember it was so beautiful that I called my father in, who didn't play video games, didn't know anything about Final Fantasy. I'm like, you have to see this. It's so good, this materia I've got. And So I was like super into it, and I remember when what's her name, Aerith?
Yeah, Aerith.
Aerith
Yeah.
gets stabbed by
Sephiroth.
Sephiroth. At the end of the first disc, I I loved it, and then I don't know why I haven't played any of the other ones. I tried to play the remake briefly, but I just didn't have it in me.
The remake is really good. It essentially takes like the first 2 hours of the original game and like expands it out to like 60.
Really? Oh
Yeah.
man, I spent
Because
too many hours racing chocobos to try to get the right breed. I think that's what scared me away from going back. Like I got so deep into chocobo breeding that it was kind of disturbing.
So what I love about Final Fantasy, I don't know if we've ever talked about it on the podcast, is that every numbered introduction into the series is a new universe or a new world, and they're not connected.
Why. That's
so
okay.
7 will never connect to 8, which will never connect to 9, which will never connect to 10. So that's why within certain ones they'll have like Final Fantasy 7 Dirge of Cerberus, and it's an entirely different game, but it's set in the Final Fantasy 7 universe.
Yeah.
Or that's why there was like 3 Final Fantasy 13s, like 13, then 13-2, and 13-3, I think.
yeah, Lightning's Return.
Yeah, so you get a bunch of that. The first one I ever played was 10-2, which was just glorified fan service.
Yeah, I remember that. That was the one with Yuna.
Yes,
Riku. I think that her name was Riku, and then Pain. Yes,
Yeah.
Pain.
I forgot about that. Yeah, that was I liked it so much because I had never played anything like that before, so that opened the door for me. But yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I remember that. I actually remember you playing that.
Yeah, I mean that was the first, because I had played Kingdom Hearts and I knew some of the Final Fantasy characters were in Kingdom Hearts. That was like a big stepping stone for me to get into the Final Fantasy world. And that was the new game that had come out after, I think it was the first Kingdom Hearts. The new Final Fantasy game that came out after Kingdom Hearts was 10-2. So I got that. I enjoyed it. And I played a couple more after that. But, Anthony, I have played a little bit of Rivals, which made me want to play Overwatch a little bit. So I played Overwatch a little bit. And I know, like, there's like 10 characters I've never even seen before. Like, it's changed so much. And I feel like they're pumping out more characters more often. Is that
Yeah, so I think that they're trying to kind of up the frequency of it a little bit. So they don't release a new character every season. It's almost like every other season they'll release a new character. So this new season that came out, they released a new tank. His name is Hazard. So next season there won't be a new character.
So do you have to pay for Hazard as a new? Oh, so you can just jump in as him.
So you never had to buy the new characters. At first they had put them into the battle pass, and so you had to like kind of grind up to like I think level 44 in the battle pass, but like you could do it in the free version. They since then took them out of the battle pass. I honestly thought it was in poor taste. Some people didn't agree with me, but I thought that it was really dumb that they would put new characters into the battle pass, because it's like, dude, like,
just let people play.
You have this new character. This new character's that's gonna change the dynamic and whatnot of a game, and then you have no access to this character, and you can't really try this character out unless you paid for the premium, or you grind it all the way up to level 44, which some people, like, unless like you're a teenager or somebody that doesn't have like a crazy amount of hours in a job, you're just not gonna have the time to do that. Yeah, exactly. Maybe
so
on the weekends.
You have to grind to level 44 every season to play the new character?
Every season that there was a new character, you would have to grind up to level 44 of that battle pass, and then like you would unlock them.
That's too much. Yeah, that's too much. Anyway.
But yeah, they took that off now. Now characters are available right off the rip, and
nice. So. Good for Overwatch players. Have you been up to anything else, or it was just mostly gaming?
Mostly gaming, and watching this movie, with hopes that we make it through.
The goal with this podcast is to reference the movie as little as possible, so that the curse doesn't befall us. We just it goes right over the curse's head. No, I'm kidding.
But yeah, how about you, Dakota? What have you been up to? We've been babbling on.
No, it's okay. It's all right. That's all part of the game. No, I've been jumping into that show I mentioned last time, The Dragon Prince.
Oh.
It's a Netflix exclusive show. It definitely has a very strong Avatar: The Last Airbender vibe, even in like the show's premise. I have not watched Arcane, but I can see why some people would compare the two. And yeah,
Arcane's good. Arcane's really good.
I want to get into that. I think that's my next tackle after Dragon Prince. But the 7th season of Dragon Prince just released, and it's supposedly the final season. So I've currently watched. I'm on season 4 now. I'm loving it. It's actually so fun, and it's such a well thought out world. And the main character, one of the main characters, is voiced by the same guy who plays Sokka in.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling us that. Yeah, that's cool.
There's a really funny scene. It's really not spoiling anything, but I had one of those, like, that GIF of Leonardo DiCaprio like pointing at the TV.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
I had one of those moments where Sokka picks up something that looks curved, and he goes, or not Sokka, he's not Sokka in this. His name's Callum. So Callum picks up this like weapon. It's kind of a curved thing, and he goes, "Boomerang," as if like he recognizes Boomerang from another life. Yeah, it was just so funny. I died laughing. But there's a bunch of those little references from just like pop culture in general that it's really cleverly woven in. And basically the premise of the show is humans and elves kind of live on separate sides of this continent, and they've been in a long-winded battle for the past 300 years, until recently one of the kings of the humans killed the Dragon King, which was kind of like the protector of the continent and on the elves' side. So that became a catalyst for the story to happen, where basically now the Dragon Prince is involved, and he's the key to there being peace. So getting this small egg back to its home. It's a really fascinating story, and it's long-winded in the sense that the initial quest that they set out on doesn't even get resolved until the end of season 3. So it doesn't like have huge jumps in like time, and it's really I'm really blown away by it. Eventually I want to cover it on the show because I think you guys would really like it.
That'd be cool. Yeah, I've seen it around, but I've never like taken a dive in it. But it's definitely on my watch list. I'm interested in checking it out, and so like hearing about it from you, I'm definitely pretty stoked to check it out. I mean, I started a show. It's not a new show, but it's always something that I've heard that's really good. I know it's gonna be kind of random, and it's not really like the type of show that we talk about here, but it's called The Wire. It's an HBO.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I heard it's really good. I mean, I've never actually sat down to watch, but I've heard like that it's like one of the best shows on HBO,
and
along with Sopranos.
HBO is just saturated with good shows. So yeah, no, I watched it when it was coming out, but I was a kid at the time, so I don't really remember anything. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Guys, we are 20 minutes into our recording. Should we jump into the
episode that shall not be named?
Prisoner of that one prison we can't talk about. Rich, what is your relation to the Harry? Oh, you did mention that you were big into Harry Potter a couple shows ago, or last show I think it was. What about the films? Like, how do you like the films? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're fairly faithful. I really liked all of them. I mean, I'm trying to think. I think that the way it started for me was I may have seen the first film, and then after seeing it, then I decided I wanted to read the books. Like, I think I had waited until just before the 6th one came out, I believe, So, I was really into the books. I don't have really, I'm trying to think, I don't have any complaints about the movies, like character descriptions, anything like that. The way things played out. I thought the movies were really a really faithful adaptation to the books, and I enjoyed them thoroughly.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You wouldn't want to miss the Sights and Sounds podcast, would you? I didn't think so. Tune in with Alan Kiger.
Yeah, I was reading the books before the movies came out. If I remember correctly, I started reading the books when Prisoner of Azkaban came out, the book, the novel, not the film that we shall not name. uh, and I was basically the same age as Harry was in like the early stories, so it was very easy for me to jump into that character mindset and the world of Hogwarts. But it wasn't until, I mean, it was already like a global sensation at the time, but when the films came out, that kind of changed everything, because A, they were extremely faithful, B, they were really good, and C, they had such a cozy vibe. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, you turn on, the Sorcerer's Stone, it just has like a charm to it that doesn't seem replicable. Like, I know that HBO is working on a Harry Potter series. I'm interested, tentatively. I don't think that they need to do that.
Yeah.
But maybe there's something there that can be good. I really don't know, but we shall see. I just don't see how they'll recapture that early 2000s vibe, because it was almost like 90s vibe, like bleeding into the 2000s, and there were certain practicalities and the ways that they were filming at the time that it just looked so good, because it was filmed on film, not digital. So I don't know. I'm rambling at this point, but
you're right though, because that's essentially, the books take place in the 90s.
Yeah.
And so really the time meshed well with how the movies and the stories are coming out. For me, Harry Potter, we've talked about it before. You were the one that got me into Harry Potter. The movies had not come out yet. I think that, I don't remember when did Goblet of Fire come out?
The movie?
No, the book.
I want to say 2004.
Was it 2004?
We have Google. Let's figure this out.
Because, I mean, if that's the case, then I started reading Harry Potter before. Let me see.
Oh, no. It was published in 2000.
Okay. And the first movie came out in like 2001.
Correct.
So I started reading the books right after the Goblet of Fire came out. Because, like, I remember that, I think you had talked about it. You were like, oh, I think you had gotten the book. And I didn't know, like, I hadn't been, part of the Harry Potter world, and you let me borrow the first one, and, like, dude, I was, like, hooked. I was hooked from then on. And then, so I got up to 4, and then we had to wait for the rest. Yeah. I had never been that excited for a series, like, to actually, like, read a series in the same way.
And I don't think there's ever going to be anything like that again, because there was just no culture around reading. But for young people, there was, before that, there really wasn't a big children's book series that swept the world. And I don't think we'll ever reach that height of anything again, just because, it was just wholly unique. It introduced reading for fun to a whole generation. But
it did,
anyway.
But it captured a lot more. Like, it wasn't just kids, it captured adults. Like, it's tough, like, we would read, Tolkien and maybe C.S. Lewis, but, like, not every kid's gonna read Tolkien. They might read C.S. Lewis, but, like, your boy, we already talked about, like, how his stuff is, like, pretty deep, and it's a little, I mean, it's hard for, like, a kid to understand some of that stuff too. And so I like the way that like, yeah, like you were talking about the faithful adaptations. Like it really gave you a visualization and like a face to like these characters as we started to read the new ones that would come out. Like I would picture Daniel Radcliffe, as Harry Potter.
Yes. Yeah, actually, that's a really good way to put it. It definitely gave voice, or it gave a visualization to the characters in ways that I don't think anyone was really expecting. But
Yeah.
with the first two movies directed by Chris Columbus, they had a very specific. They were almost like Christmas movies, if that makes sense. Very like wintry, a lot of snow,
Right.
a lot of that.
But you could also like they were really good. It was almost like The Nightmare Before Christmas. You could watch that in the fall, or you could watch that
Yes.
during the winter.
Yeah,
like
that's a good way to
like,
put
they
that.
had like a really good vibe. Like Harry Potter is like really good to watch in like the second half of the year. I mean, you can watch it whenever, but like you said, there's that cozy vibe, and like the coziness, especially like in the areas where the weather changes and it starts to get cold. And so like if you're in a place that has like a fireplace, like you're watching Harry Potter, you've got the crackling of the fire, you may be drinking some coffee or tea or hot chocolate that really like enhances that mood. Harry Potter, like it really does like set a mood.
It's kind
for
of
that
like
time of the year.
sitting by a hearth in like in the
Yes,
cold of winter.
yes.
Yeah, it's that vibe. So what I was trying to, or like what I'm getting at is, with Chris Columbus, you had that vibe,
Yeah.
but with this one, with Alfonso Cuarón, he changed that up quite a bit. I mean, it's still a comfort movie. The whole series really is, but this one is particularly dark. Not
Yes.
only tonally, but like the themes are dark. The actual visualization, the color scheme is dark and like cold, and it doesn't have that hearth vibe, if that makes sense. It doesn't. It's not like a movie that's gonna warm you up. Yeah, I was really taken aback by. They're not taken aback. I've seen this movie 100 times probably, but the actual directorial imprint on this film I was paying attention to more on this last viewing, and I was really just he had a lot of flair, like it was a lot of really cool filmmaking that we don't really get to see with the rest of this not trilogy, but this series. Like, one thing that I noticed a lot of times is that he would fade out of scenes by putting like a vignette around the corners of the screen, where all the corners would get dark, and then
Yeah.
it would like close in on a character's face. Really just so cool. There's a lot of times where like certain things are just blacked out in the corners, like you're not supposed to look at this. This is what you're supposed to focus on. I love that kind of stuff. And even just like the stylistic use of magic. Like, I know I have a lot of issues with the opening scene in this movie where Harry's breaking the law and like doing his like Lumos under his covers outside of Hogwarts, because that's obviously that's obviously an offense, a breach of magical law. But I think it's a really just gorgeous way to open up the movie, like with the Warner Brothers logo, like you're like zooming in on like this light that's like getting brighter and brighter as he's practicing Lumos. Which,
I know, in that last one, what do you use, like Lumos Maxima? Like, bro, like he just shown the whole like house, man.
and I love the coordination of having Vernon Dursley like just like keep like trying to like see what the heck's going on, like what is that bright light.
You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of like the kids of that time would remember stuff like that. The Game Boy, dude, it had the same vibe, the Game Boy vibe with the little light, and then you're playing Pokemon, and then like
man.
you know that you're not supposed to, and then like you hear somebody coming in, like you like lay it on your chest, like pretending that you're asleep, and then you go back.
Or
Dude.
you're a junior in high school who's way too old to be playing Pokemon religiously.
Dude,
And
I played all the way through high school.
I was playing it in English class, and the teacher came to check our homework, and I had to like flip the pages over, and I could see the red light shining through the pages of loose leaf. Luckily, he wasn't paying enough attention, so he just walked by because I had.
He's like, no, that's just my Dalek under the pages.
Yeah.
No, but I agree, and I think that tonal shift, especially for the movies, was necessary because the third book was a tonal shift, because the first two books felt very much so like really good entry level points for especially like kids that are like starting to like read. Like it was really good, and it didn't really punish you being a young kid reading these books. Like you might have not understood some of the names. Like I'm gonna tell you, like I butchered Hermione's name. I didn't know how to say her name. I did not know how to say Hermione's name until the movie came out. I was like, oh, that's how you say it.
Yeah, my mom, like, because she was also reading the books, she like was very adamant. Her name is Hermione. Her name is Hermione. I'm like, are you sure? And it
how do you pronounce this?
It's
Hermione.
It's not Hermione.
But yeah, so this book definitely shifts in the darker direction too. For me as a kid, like reading this book, it was confusing to me. Like especially like towards the end, like
yeah,
like it's also or maybe it's a little bit rough because like you're reading the same thing over and over with like variable changes, very slight changes from maybe a different point of view, but like they're still explaining what's happening, and you just heard about it, and you're like I remember reading about the time turner, but I'm like, oh my gosh, like I just read this. What happened?
Yeah, it's a little trippy. Rich, what do you think about the tonal shift in this movie as opposed to the previous two?
I think it makes sense, right, in terms of the Harry's journey, I suppose, right? It's like he gets kind of cozy in number 1, still trying to figure things out in number 2, and then you kind of you get the shift where it also does change Harry in a way. I think he becomes, I don't want to say he doesn't fight. I don't think he really treats himself as the most important person, and of course, he is the boy who lives, so he battles with that, right? But there are times where, like later on, he will make decisions that they're not well thought out, and they're some of it I think is because of this whole idea that he needs to constantly be vigilant, and I think you start seeing it in this movie where he's convinced that his dad created the Patronus. And he just won't listen to anybody. He won't listen to any logic, which is, I understand. I mean, 3 years ago, he didn't know that magic was a thing. And now there's magic. So maybe his dad is alive, but he so is into that. And I think that that really becomes an adult, right, theme there that you have, where you have this.
Well, I want to jump in there because I think that's actually a really important part to like Harry's story. Sorry, I have like sirens going off left and right around me. I don't know what's going on outside. Joker's taking over. What was I gonna say? Yeah. So in the course of this movie, he meets all 3 of his father's friends. His best buddies. The Marauders. He meets 3 of the Marauders, and one of the Marauders was said to be a killer until he wasn't. He actually is my godfather. He's been looking after me. Another Marauder was supposed to be dead for 12 years, but no, he's just been a rat for a long time. So in that moment, he sees someone who's capable of producing a Patronus that he cannot currently manage, and in his mind, he's thinking, well, if my dad's friend just came back from the dead, if my dad's friend broke out of prison to be with me, if my dad's friend came to teach at Hogwarts, then maybe my dad's here. I can see that.
Yeah,
I can see that going on in his head. Like he's overcome with like newfound faith in the people that came before, and poor Hermione has to be like, "No one's coming, Harry. Like that doesn't make sense, Harry." So
I didn't even really think about that he that he could have had that belief because of all that happening, but in the end he ended up gaslighting himself. It was him the whole time.
I just want to know why
Oh, go ahead.
Peter. See, here's what we all know. We all know about the Weasley family, right? It's a very packed house in there, right? You could be a rat anywhere. You know, he could go to France and become a famous chef. I just don't understand why he decides to live with the Weasleys.
Not the Ratatouille reference.
So, I don't know if this is like if this is like fact or I'm just like creating logic for the sake of it, but I would imagine that he would want to stay informed with the goings-on of the wizarding world to a degree where he would need to be around people who are currently attending Hogwarts or work in the Ministry of Magic enough so that he can basically get some insight into whether or not he who must not be named ever returns. You know, because ultimately he sold himself out for that, so that would be the only opportunity for him to come back as a human. Because, you know, he put one of his friends in jail. He's pretending to be dead. So to me, the logic is he would want to be somewhere in the middle of everything, but with a family who would actually take care of him. Like the Malfoys are never going to take care of a rat. You know, I don't know. Maybe that makes sense to you, listener.
That makes
maybe it
you
doesn't.
know what? I can see that. Like the Weasleys will feed him, right? Like the Malfoys would have a nicer house and everything, and maybe he'd have a more swanky, like a little hole in the wall, but he'd probably have to scrounge for food a lot more. And, you know, who knows, maybe at that time Dobby's not a nice guy to rats, so that could be a problem. Like maybe, you know, one of the reasons why they don't want Dobby to get his freedom is that we don't really know, but he's very mean to animals. Like maybe that's the thing.
Maybe that's the thing. One of my favorite shots in this movie is pretty early on when Harry's at the Leaky Cauldron and he's joining the Weasleys for breakfast, and it's this long shot. I don't know if you guys ever noticed it. Like when they come downstairs, and you know they point out the fact that Ron has been talking about going to Egypt for for the summer to everyone. That whole shot pans to Miss Weasley talking to him, and then Arthur Weasley pulling him off to the side. So there's a whole rig set up for the entirety of the shot to go into like the cracks over here and then back out to the whole family, and it's a 2 or 3 minute long take that has no right being as good as it is, but it works so well because everyone in this is such a good actor. At least they know their roles really well. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate that. And that's the great thing about Harry Potter is that everyone knows their roles so well. And magically, I don't know how they did it, but 95% of the kids that they cast to play these actors played them for 8 films. You know, like we've never seen that in a movie or TV show to that extent where kids that were hired as child actors grew up to be adult actors in the roles that they're playing. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, some adult actors don't even make it to like the next season of a TV show, Rings of Power. So yeah, I mean, no, you're right. Like the fact that they last, and this was 10 years, man. 10 years. From 2001 to 2011 that these movies came out.
They lasted longer than Dumbledore did. He got replaced.
Yeah.
Was it the actor died?
Oh yeah.
yeah. I was like, that wasn't his fault.
Well, if you read a little bit of him on set, he wasn't helping himself out. I think Michael.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure if it's Michael Gambon. I know that's one of the actors. I don't want to.
Michael Gambon is the second actor to play.
Okay,
it.
so the first one, I think his name is Richard something. He was notoriously drunkard on set. There were times where they had to
I didn't know that.
like reschedule things. Like he was kind of a hot mess on set. So
what I will say is, I think the first actor, I forget his name, but I think the first Dumbledore actor did portray the role more like I remember. I understood it as a kid in my head.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He did a really good job.
But that doesn't mean that like Gambon doesn't come into the role as the series progresses. I didn't necessarily like him in this movie.
It's Richard Harris, by the way.
Richard Harris, yes, yes. What else did he play? He was in Gladiator. He was Marcus Aurelius. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we should do Gladiator on the show sometime. That'd be pretty cool. Sorry.
Random thought. No, but yeah, I agree. I will say that the second actor, I mean, he had to like kind of, I guess, get a feel for the role. So this first movie with him in it was maybe not his best, but I'm gonna be honest with you, I would have been none the wiser because Prisoner of Azkaban is not my favorite.
Okay.
To be fair,
yeah.
So not to say that it's terrible.
Tell me about that, Anthony. Express your emotions to us. Like, why do you hate Prisoner of Azkaban? Why do you step on it when you see it in the street?
So I love a lot of what Prisoner Azkaban brings in. Like, you know, you get these like creatures like the Dementors. You get a really cool character in Sirius Black and Remus Lupin. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of greatness that came out of this movie and like book, but it's just, you know, with the introduction of like the time travel mechanic, for me that just did not feel magical. Like, it felt very sci-fi instead of fantasy.
Sure.
Not to,
okay.
You know, I know that mechanic is used in fantasy, but it just wasn't my favorite, and I feel like that sentiment is shared by a lot of people because you never see it again.
Well, yeah, I think they mention time turners in the 5th book, which is when they go into the Ministry of Magic. Mm-hmm. Supposedly, time turners were basically made illegal, and then somehow they all got destroyed during the siege of the Ministry of Magic. So clearly, Rowling realized this is just like a Deus Ex Machina and needs to be like put away. Like, it cannot possibly fix every issue that they have, because that would just, and ultimately that does become, like, you know, if you really pull that thread, that's a plot hole, you know, like the fact that they have the ability to just turn back time. If they turn it long enough, they can stop Voldemort from killing Harry's parents if they wanted to.
I mean, honestly, what was stopping them from just making it a magical broom cupboard that transported them through space and time, you know? That was larger than in the inside than it looked in the outside, you know?
You know.
Oh wait. I feel like that's been used before somewhere. I can't think. Somewhere.
Well, at least there's a broom cupboard that, you know, teleports you magically later in this series with Malfoy. You know, like
there is the room of requirement.
Yeah, the room of requirement has a broom cupboard that goes straight to Nocturne Alley, which is like, how convenient is
oh yeah, like the it was like a pathway. It was like two
Borgin and Burke's.
Yeah, it was like two like wardrobe things, you know.
Yeah.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's funny, but yeah. So I don't know. Like it's just it was just never my favorite. I always watch it because I want to watch the entire series, but like I go from like, you know, the first 2 movies, which like, you know, I absolutely love. Maybe the first one more so than the second one, but the second one is still really good. And then you get to the third one, which looks really like visually appealing, and like now they're not like kids anymore; they're like teens, and so like they look different, and so it's really cool to see, like, you know, them, you know, a little bit more grown up. But like my favorite one, well, as far as like books, my favorite one is The Goblet of Fire, because it really made the world a lot bigger in the book, because you had the whole World Cup thing that was like, it was a huge section in the book, and it was like a smaller section in the movie. But I know that we're talking about the third movie. I'm, you know,
you're trying
just,
to
like,
express your thoughts, like
express
as a whole, yeah.
Right. And then the fact that they had the other schools, it really like made the Harry Potter world a lot bigger than just the you know, Hogwarts, like and Diagon Alley and Gringotts and stuff. It like expanded it out outward a little bit more. So
here's what I'll say about Prisoner of Azkaban. I share your sentiments to a degree. I think that this movie is extremely visually appealing. Like, it's a gorgeous movie.
Absolutely.
The directorial stamp was amazing. I wish Alfonso Cuarón did more of them, because dude had a vision. Like, he had
a good eye.
He had a good eye. He understood like what looks and feels magical, you know, like there's a lot of really cool locations and like random character designs that I've learned to like over the years. But so I like the first half of the movie a lot, but as soon as the time turner,
I agree.
As soon as the time turner comes into play and the third act is just a retread of the second act, oh boy, I
think that's where the book loses me too.
Yeah, it loses me.
It's not really his fault, you know. That's just how the book is, and you know, I agree with you with the vision, and I feel like had we got him for
if he did Goblet of Fire, that would have been such a good movie. Because as it stands, Goblet of Fire is my least favorite of the 8 movies. With this as a second, just because I have to think about that. But Prisoner is definitely in my lower tier, just because it's my least favorite to rewatch. Just because it basically, like, the ending plays twice, you know, because of the time turner. Rich, how do you feel? Like, what is your thought on the time turner mechanic, and if that affects your viewing appreciation at all?
I don't think it really does. I don't mind it. I mean, obviously they can't use it. They can't use it, again, and it has to be kind of locked away. But for me, I don't know. I guess it's almost weird where the way I accept it, all the canon is I just kind of like download it as fact and move on. I don't even question whether it's okay or not. It's just, this is what happened to Harry Potter. So I really do. I like this one a lot. I think it's because I really like the character of Sirius Black. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
I dressed up like him for Comic-Con, so I'm 1 year, so I don't know if I have a bias here. So I actually
you certainly do.
I loved the character, and then I'm kicking myself because I can't remember the actor's name.
Gary Oldman,
but he's absurd,
yeah.
right? Like, you know, he's somehow
he kills that character.
He's Sirius
he kills
Black,
that. He's so good.
But he's also like very differently Commissioner Gordon, right? Whereas I don't know. For me, I remember the first time I saw Hans Gruber. I'm blanking out on the Alan Rickman, right? And I remember I'm like, no, that's the guy from Die Hard. That's. It took me a while to accept him as Snape, where I just think that Gary Oldman is able to do something. I don't know what it is, but he is different people. Whereas I didn't feel the same. So this movie might be one of my tops, even though it's a little crazy.
Okay.
And I mean,
I feel that.
I'm also
right.
somebody who
that.
can ride on the same highway for years, but then that one time I get on the exit, the entrance ramp that I've never gotten on before, I get on, I'm like, oh, that's so cool. So rewatching the same, Act 2 again in Act 3, just seeing the little difference. This is what happened, and it was actually Hermione howling. For me, I kind of enjoy it. I don't remember reading it. It's obviously much quicker watching it, so it doesn't bother me as much. But I'm a sucker for like slightly perspective, right? How did this character see it? How did this character see it?
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I think Gary Oldman killed the role of Sirius Black. Like, I'm so impressed by it, because for years, the character of him playing Commissioner Gordon in the Batman series and him playing Sirius in these movies were completely separate in my mind. They were different actors. I did not.
I agree.
I did not see it
yes.
in the moment.
I did not either. Yeah, and it's crazy. Like that means he was really busy, because we had the Batman movies were kind of coming out around the time that these Harry Potter movies were coming out too. Yeah,
it's true. He was a busy guy in the early 2000s. But let's talk a little bit about the dynamic at the end of the movie with with the three remaining Marauders and Snape, because I find that that's such a great scene. You know, we finally, all of our mysteries kind of coalesce in one moment, where Sirius isn't really dead, or sorry, Sirius isn't really after Harry Potter. He's after a rat, and then Remus comes into the room, and he seems like a bad guy all of a sudden. And then, you know, these two are teaming up with each other, and you have this like, oh wait, my loyalties should be are kind of skewed at the moment. What's going on? And then they introduce, you know, Scabbers was a rat this whole time. He was the rat all along, and that doesn't really matter to Snape because he barges in. You know, he has his own way of viewing things, kind of like what you were saying, Rich, is that everyone has their own vantage point of whatever they're seeing, and he's so happy to see that Lupin and Sirius are in the same room, because to him that means like everything that he has thought going into the school year has been true, but he's totally false anyway. Also, I love that Harry's go-to move, Expelliarmus, has just grown so powerful that he can just, you know, it's supposed to disarm people. It's supposed to just like, whoop, your wand is in the air. That's what the spell is supposed to do. Harry's is like a cannonball. It just knocks Snape right through the post of the bed and into the wall.
And then it like just like it eventually grows into some like freaking Kamehameha beam, like
oh my god,
into like a red beam, dude. Like it goes to like full on like let's say like Ghostbusters beam, like, you know. Dude, it's crazy, and it starts like arcing like electricity too. It's crazy,
like plasma.
It's
crazy. It's really cool. I love the use of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I love that scene. Also, I love the subtle decision to like put everything in the Shrieking Shack. I know that that's part of the book, but it was a decision on the film's part not to make it a static set. Everything was swaying, you know, like in the breeze, like the entire building was like going left and right and left and right. So
yes, I like that too.
It's just visually like, what is going on? This is such a magical place. This is such a magical world. But yeah.
And like it's, now that they did that, like you couldn't imagine it not doing that, you know?
Right. You feel that when you reread the books. So yeah, little stuff like that I really appreciate. How do you feel that they tackled the Dementors, book to movie? Because for me, in my head, they looked like when I read them, they seemed more like ring wraiths. Mm-hmm. You know, like hooded characters. Yeah. Hooded characters that had, you know, like you couldn't really see their mouths. But in the movie, it was just kind of like cloaks that were just covering their form with a big hole in the center of the cloak. How did you feel about the Dementors and like how they were portrayed?
I feel like they did close enough, because they do, or I feel like they got close enough because they do have a little bit of that ring wraithy feel to it, but like more spectral rather than like an actual like thing or like thing that you could touch, you know? Like if it seemed like, you know, if you were to go touch it, like your hand would kind of like go through it. And so I mean, I do kind of share a little bit of that thought. I think that was my initial thought too. I think that especially when it comes to like reading things, your brain tries to associate stuff to something, you know, like when you're reading about Harry, Ron, and Hermione at a younger age, you know, I'm glad that they do kind of like put, you know, their faces on something, so you kind of had a little bit of a thing to grab onto. So yeah, like when I first read about the ring wraiths, I mean, not the ring wraiths, oh my gosh,
the
Dementors, I did get that vibe.
Rich, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. I guess I had assumed that they were more ring wraithy, but I guess when you're thinking about the way they work in that world, they're a little bit more ephemeral. They're not
yeah,
right.
True.
Because of, you know, I kind of imagine them like even almost floating between the cells in Azkaban, where they don't have to take stairs or whatever it is, and whereas the ring wraiths were, I mean, they couldn't cross water. Like, oh no, it's water. Can't cross this.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, no, you got a good point there.
The portrayal of the Marauders and Snape is interesting here because by the end of the series, I don't know. The way I view it, Snape's been wronged by the Marauders. They're actually just a group of annoying bullies. Like, they talk about James so nicely, but when you kind of take a step back, it's weird to think that Lupin is a teacher. But when everything goes down, like, they're still like, oh, I hate Snape. It's like, dude, you're like presumably in your late 20s at minimum, right? And you haven't gotten over a high school rivalry. Like, you didn't see that maybe you and your boys picked on Snape a little bit too hard, and that he was just kind of like lovesick with, for Lily. That and the fact that, I mean, I forgot how much it bothered me, or maybe it didn't bother me back then, but you have her eyes, like just the way people will say really, really weird, like this poor boy, his parents have died, right? And it seems like every time you meet someone, they have to be like, oh, you're just like James, or you have Lily's eyes. And like the poor guy, maybe he's just thinking, I want to go to Hogsmeade and get a butterbeer. And then this dude's like, oh, by the way, your mom died. She was brutally murdered by a person whose name we won't even say. So, there's that.
I also find it funny that whenever they do show the mom, like the actress that, plays Harry's mom, they don't give her contacts to like make her eyes look like Harry's. It's a completely different eye color and everything. Like it's just they're trying to just suggest that these two people have the same eyes. But I've never been in a position where I look at someone and I think your eyes remind me of an entirely different person. That's so weird. I've never thought that in my life. So I can understand as a baby. I can understand as a baby where you're like trying to like, piece together, oh, he has your nose, or oh, your eyes are spaced apart way too much like your father, stuff like that. I can understand. But I've never been in a position where like, I saw someone and was just like, your eyes remind me of someone I haven't seen in 12 years. Like how closely were you looking?
I did want to like talk a little bit about we kind of glossed over Remus Lupin a little bit. I did really like his character. I liked that, especially I remember reading like in the books, and it's emulated here in the movies. He almost kind of becomes a little bit of a father figure to Harry, Yes. Something that Harry wants, like that familial bond. He doesn't feel that with the Dursleys. He gets that a little, a bit with Ron and Hermione, and a little bit of Ron's family. But this is like a strong male role model that Harry can kind of like look up to. I really like that dynamic, and they show it really well in this movie. I like that whole thing that he was having issues with the Dementors like targeting him, and Remus like taking it upon himself, like, I'm going to teach you how to fight them off. And they did that really well in the movie.
Yeah, and he kind of gets like two father figures, because eventually he finds Sirius, who, is willing to take him into his house once his name is cleared. Spoiler alert, it never does get cleared. But yeah, I think that's it's this movie's actually like such a big tease for Harry, because he gets all of his hopes up. He even thinks his dad is alive at one point.
Wrong.
Just to get shut down.
Just to get shut down at every turn. Let's talk about Lupin a little bit and his transformation. I remember when I first watched Prisoner of Azkaban, I'd really disliked the transformation scene, or like the design of the werewolf character, because it doesn't really look like a wolf, but maybe it does look like a half wolf, half man. I'm not really sure, but I remember at or around that time, the movies, what was it called, Underworld, were coming out, and those were heavily about, vampires versus werewolves, and the werewolves looked amazing. They looked so cool. They were so like, beastly. So seeing this like skinny like Professor Lupin was really weird, and I was just like, not what I expected. I'll let it pass. I'll let it slide this time. What are your thoughts on skinny wolf Professor Lupin?
I guess it matches. I mean, because
okay.
maybe if it was like Victor Crumb, right? Like, then you get the underworld ones, but here you have Lupin.
Oh yeah, for real.
I just don't. And this is obviously source material stuff, right? But I'm surprised he doesn't have some sort of magical medallion that stops him from transforming, right? Isn't it? What does he take? I can't. Does he actually take anything to abate his mooniness?
Yeah, he does. He has a potion that he has to take every full moon, and that's something that's brought up in the film a couple times. So Snape has been losing like potion making material for his classroom because Dumbledore requests that he makes his potion for Remus, and then later when Remus first sees the full moon, which, shame on you for not like looking at a calendar, Remus, like, I mean, before you decided to.
I think that's kind of my point. It seems to be like very like, oops, gotta take my meds, type of stuff.
Yeah, well, that's when like Sirius like runs over to him and like, you idiot, did you not take your medicine? Like, what's wrong with you, Remus, my friend? And he starts beating his chest. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, it doesn't really. There's a bunch of plot holes in this movie.
And why does he get hot? See, I know that Dumbledore. I guess he's the type that would hire a convict in a school district. But I mean, just bringing in a werewolf. I mean, even though you got the potion, I don't know. It's also Remus. Like, I think you need to rethink a career. Like maybe night watchman at a school or something. I don't know if you should be a teacher at a sleepaway school. Like, there are just a lot of questions. The hiring practices of Hogwarts, but defensive against the dark arts is one of the hardest positions. I mean, nobody's got those certifications. I mean, all over New York State, people are looking for defensive against dark arts, and it's just not a lot of people are studying that anymore.
They just haven't found you, Rich.
Listen, I'd be very excited. I do love English. I love literature, but I think it would be somehow even better if I were at Hogwarts.
Wow. High self-praise. Very self-aggrandizing of you.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, this movie / book introduces the concept of the animagus.
Yes, which is how Scabbers was actually a raving killer this whole time, and Sirius was able to break out of Azkaban. So one thing I do want to mention, there's a pretty major plot hole that the movie creates for the book that the book does not have. And I understand why they did it. It's a cost-saving time. But the actual Marauders map, in the book, it does not show Peter Pettigrew on it. So that's something that the film made up so that Remus can get involved and eventually, find out what's going on. But I'm assuming, and they never really bring it up in the books, but I'm assuming that the actual Marauders are never, are magically absent from the map, which is why in the books we never hear about, Fred and George joking around with Ron about how he's always sleeping with a guy named Peter Pettigrew. Because if there was a Peter Pettigrew on the map sleeping next to Ronald Weasley, it would be kind of weird because there's nobody there.
Hey, who's that guy that you're just with every night?
Yeah.
Who's Peter?
Who's Peter? Yeah, no, it is kind of a weird little thing that the movie adds that would be. It doesn't make any sense, logically. If Fred and George have had this map since their first year, and it was Percy's rat before it was Ron's. So yeah, it's all kinds of backwards with that. But guys, with that, I think I need to call the podcast here. I have a D&D game I have to get to right after this. But thank you so much for listening to us here for our 105th episode of Project Geekology. We record this on December 33rd, 2024. Don't get it. Don't get it wrong. What are we doing next week?
I actually had that in mind. You know what? I was like, let's keep this continuation trade going on, and we haven't done a Star Wars in a while. We should do Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi happens to be the one Star Wars movie I've never seen, so I guess we're gonna have to jump into that.
Let us do it.
I'm kidding.
Oh.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. I was gonna say if you believe that
My heart,
yeah.
like, I got so.
He's been like lounging on a sofa the entire time, guys, and he sat up in his seat like
So that you can clearly see the
baffled.
Death Star behind me from Return of the Jedi, right?
Return of the Jedi Death Star. Yeah,
Dude, I thought that was Battlestar Galactica back there.
Oh no!
certainly looks like it. All right, let's jump into Return of the Jedi next week. Rich, you joining us?
Yeah, I have seen that movie a couple of times.
Rich, I think you're a regular at this point. We should just invite you on for good. If you can't make it to one podcast or I can't make it to another, whatever, we'll figure it out. But thanks so much for joining us all these weeks now.
Having a blast, man.
Yeah, I'm enjoying having a third person on the podcast, and I hope you guys listening also are.
Yeah, it's really nice to have that additional person, their perspective and whatnot. And I mean, honestly, like, I'm not opposed to another person if they want to pop in, somebody obviously that we know to talk about whatever it is that they're into that we're talking about in that instance. But for sure, I agree.
All right, guys. Again, thanks so much. We will listen, or you will listen to us next week. You must listen to us next week. Sorry, that was very forceful, but I mean it. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Goodbye, y'all.
No Wolverine.